All right. Good morning, everyone. Looks like people have been joining this webinar today. So welcome to this month's Visit and See Partner webinar. I'm Katie Bailey. I am the Tourism Marketing Manager at Visit and See, and I oversee most of our content production, as well as a lot of other things. As you all know, we all wear a lot of hats, but we're excited to be talking about content creation best practices for your brand today. With us, we've got Dana Grimstead, who is also on the Visit and See marketing team. Many of you probably know her, as well as other members of the Luke Wire team, who is our agency of record. We've got Christina Rogers, Director of Content, Maggie Carpenter, who's head of our social platforms and many things. She also teaches me what the newest trends are, which is very important, as well as Jess Ottaviano, who is very integral to our paid social as well as content creation, content creators team. So as we know, content in all of its many forms is a huge beast, and a constantly hungry thing that you have to feed, be it your website, updating your website, sending out emails, and the ever hungry social media platforms that we do. Would love to hear about how you all feel about feeding the content machine. So drop your favorite emoji in the chat if you can, to kind of represent y'all's feelings around content creation and content strategy. We will have Q&A at the end. So while this is a pretty intensely long, maybe PowerPoint that we're going to be going through, we will be opening it up for questions at the end, and we're always available to answer any of your questions after this as well. So I know from leading our content on the Visit and See side that it is an always on beast that we are constantly trying to refine, better, and learn new things as new trends, new platforms, and new ideas come around. And so we know that that is such an exciting part in many ways of this work, but it can be extremely daunting, especially if you don't have a large team or you're not really sure where to start. And so a big part of what we're going to be talking about today is how many stories that you have to tell, starting with the stories, and how to build out a content strategy with that. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Christina Rogers. Please feel free to drop any questions in the chat or in the Q&A section. We'll be answering them as we can, as well as at the end. So Christina, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Katie. Yes, we are all so thrilled to be with you because we live daily exactly what Katie was speaking about, right? We understand there are so many moving parts and pieces and levers to pull and channels to feed, and it can be daunting and also exciting. And I think that hopefully at the end of this presentation, you guys are going to feel more empowered and excited to dive back in because you'll have more of a strategic framework. And what we hope is very much a doable framework. For each of our sections, we're going to provide things you can literally do today at $0 more, a tiny bit more time, that's going to really change your content strategy and your approach to content capture. So we love talking shop and we love being here with you. So we're thrilled to dive into that. We think a good level set, for my kickoff here, I saw so many of the emojis with the crazy eyes. Yes, we totally with you, see you, you are heard. And now to counteract that, I'd love everyone to drop a content win that they've had from this week in the chat. It can be big, it can be small, anything that gave you that little pat on the back. I did something good for our content channels this week. Please share those as well, because it is important to stay focused on those and no win is too small. For the start of this presentation, we want to talk about the roles of the different channels, right? This is both a good level set as well as a starting place for, to tee up the rest of what we're going to talk about, because we are going to get into the tactics and the different needs and the different audiences for each. But to bring all of us into the same page, let's go ahead and talk about the roles of our different owned channels and what they play, because they are distinct. So here we go. at a high level, we tried to give you this cheat sheet. This can be something you return to just as a reminder as needed. So while all of these are responsible for telling your story, while all of these are responsible for bringing your brand story to life and reaching different audiences at different times in their engagement with you and in their travel planning journey and all of that, each of them are speaking to slightly different audiences or different sections of your audiences in slightly different ways. So what is your website? When we think about our websites, this is an always on tool for information. This is a resource for travelers at any stage of engagement with your brand. The folks who have never been there, who showed up from Google, folks who have been before and want to come back, and those who maybe live here or who have been before but want to explore new things. So this needs to be something that speaks to people at any stage of their journey and anyone that may find you from maybe an ad, anywhere, any stage of engagement with your brand and familiarity with your brand. So what do you as a content creator need to know and need to think about and need to do for your website content? You need to be able to anticipate questions and provide static free paths to answers. That's not sexy. There's lots of ways to make it sexy, but that is your sole, like your main goal to do content right for your website is to find stories. Yes, it's all through stories. And we're going to talk about how you get those stories and how you make them work hard for you, but you cannot do it at the sacrifice of a clear path from question to answer, or from, I have an interest and I want to find, the inspiration or the information I need to make that a reality. So that's your role for your website. And what matters most in this channel is both equal parts inspiration and information, right? You want to inspire people to come or to come back, but you also want to give them quickly information that they need to do that, or something that they need to, seal the deal. And then representation, we put that one in there. This is never going to not be important, but your website, especially because it is that always on tool, you want any traveler or prospective traveler to see themselves in your location and to feel that this is a place that I want to be. So representation of all types of diversity, all types of backgrounds, ethnicities, identities, abilities. Your email, this is a different beast, right? If you are sending an email to someone, they have given you their precious, precious gold, their personal information. So your email, the role that email plays in this conversation this is an intimate conversation. Their inboxes, these are sacred places, right? If we've gotten in there, we have to understand that they gave us their trust, that we're going to add value to their lives. And the minute we don't do that, unsubscribe, right? So this is an intimate conversation. This is a more personal conversation that we have. And our role as content creators in the email space is to maintain that trust. Don't break that trust by adding value with every interaction. What that value is can look very, there's a wide range of that based on how sophisticated your email program is, how nuanced it is. You don't need to be sending, personalized, segmented emails to add value. You just need to understand your audience. And email is also the place you can ask them to tell you more about themselves so that you can better understand your audience. But you want to be coming at them never with a marketing at them, but a conversation with them in email. We really think this is a carefully curated bit of content that is going to add value in some way to your life there. So what matters most in email? I did write personalization here. That does not mean that you need to have Salesforce level dynamic content personalization. That means you need to have a two-way conversation. You need to come at them as a person, and you need to see them as a person. And so you're giving your brand a personality, giving your brand even a face. If you want an authored email, bringing the people that have experienced your destination to those emails. People trust people. So personality and persons in email. That's a great sort of cheat sheet for email. And then we talk about social, and you obviously have your paid social and your own social, and they are two different parts of the same machine. Your paid social is starting new relationships. You are paying to get in front of people that don't know you yet, and you want to get an audience you have not yet reached. You cannot have paid without owned, because your organic social, right? The content you're not paying to put out there. This is how you deepen those relationships. You start a relationship with your paid and you deepen them with your organic. So these are folks who have followed you because they see value in that relationship. So we want to find a way to deepen them. And what you need to do to be successful in that space is to meet followers where they are, understand what their preferences are, what they're looking for on those channels. Is this a place they go to check out and be entertained? Is this a place that they go because they want information and detail? Understanding that, and we'll talk you through that in this presentation, how to think about that. And we want to keep them engaged. So finding ways to signal engagement, low bars for entry, different mini polls and things like that, like shares, saves. Content they can save is a great type of engagement. What matters in social is trends. That actually, there's a strategic advantage to staying on top of trends. Authenticity. You do not want to look or feel like an ad in someone's social feed. They do not like that. And human conversation. And that comes into the community management piece as well, responding to messages and comments and finding good ways to have conversations there. All right, that was a lot of time on that slide, but this is an important level set as we start to talk through the tactics and tips and tricks for all the rest of it. With this in mind, I just talked to you about the importance of understanding each channel individually and how that you need to think differently about your content strategy for each, but you do not want to plan by channel. So we're going to start off with this first tip is to rethink your content planning process. And why is that? I'll go to the next slide, Maggie. If you can define this intersection where your user needs, and that's what's unique per channel, right? What they are looking for on your Instagram feed is very different from what they're looking for on your website. And you want to make sure you understand that. But if you can identify the needs that your users have, never losing sight of your business objectives, which for most of the folks on this call is to drive travel and tourism or increase spend in your area, right? There is this unique place where those two things intersect. And if you can define that relationship in a sentence, you have a North Star for all content decisions for that channel. So we're going to get into more about how to consider this in those ways, but this is really that sweet spot of where your content strategy plays out. So if I understand my user needs on my website and I understand what I'm trying to do, I'm going to meet them where they are. I'm going to provide something that is eliminating a barrier, solving a pain point, inspiring, entertaining, engaging, those sorts of things in that space in a way that is furthering my business objectives. So we're going to talk about that as an exercise later on. So understanding your channel's roles, understanding your users' needs per channel are different. But when I said don't plan in silos, that's because your content planning process, this is where it all starts, right? This is where the magic happens, truly. You start with the stories. So good ideas truly can come from anywhere. Very often content planning is done with maybe a 1 or 2 person cohort that we've got to get this done. We got to get our month at a glance plan. Let's do it. But when you start to extend the invitation to a content planning session to all people in your, people from across your organization, the folks boots on the ground, maybe you have sales folks, maybe you have PR, maybe whoever you have that knows your brand, knows your location, knows all of the great hidden gems, amazing stories, family memories, whatever it may be, you bring those people together in a table and say, what stories do we have to tell? Man, you get an amazing collection. But not all stories are created equal. Not all times of year are the right times for the different stories. So it's a great place to start to bring a cross-discipline, cross-functional team together. Start with identifying the good stories. Don't worry about where you're going to put them yet. Just get the stories there. The next step in that is to identify that value. So business objectives, user needs, the value that you are bringing to your users, something that is meeting one of their needs in that story. What is the value in this story? So this is where, if you can have that sentence, you can kind of gauge story decisions against that. Like, we're looking at the website. This is what our users need here. This is a story opportunity. Does this belong on the website or does this belong on social, or is it both if we make these tweaks? So identifying the value that you're adding. If we take nothing else away, you are adding value for your followers, for your users, for your prospective travelers. Then you plan your mix. So this is where you determine which content type, which timing, cadence, where you're putting it, how you're packaging it. Very often people start the reverse of this, which is why we wanted to devote time to this slide. A lot of people start with a content type. I want to make a reel. And then they go out and find a story for that reel. And we're challenging you guys today to think about it the other way around. Start with the good stories. And then with what we're going to talk about in this presentation today, you'll be able to figure out the content mix, the right content types for that story. But at the heart, there is that story. That should hopefully make sense. Here's a couple of examples of how we do that. At the heart of any good story is that sort of hero, that evergreen rich web piece, right? Remember, your website users are looking for inspiration and information. I want to have a great trip idea and I want to know how to get there. I want to have a great day excursion and I want an itinerary for it, or whatever it may be, right? But you have those stories, those human-centric, authentic stories, and that's what it starts with. That's gold because that piece is largely evergreen. You may have some updates as needed, but that's a largely evergreen piece. That's a one and done. I got all the things I needed and I put it here and it's excellent. It's going to live on for a while. We're going to gain some search volume. It's going to be, hardworking for me on the website. But if you go out to capture that story with the visuals and with some of the bits and pieces of the story in a way with that mindset of like, you know what, this could get repackaged for my email, or this could get shared in email in a different way. This could get shared on my social channels in a different way. Maybe I could make a poll that has to do with these aspects of this, whatever it is. When you start to think through that, you're making that story work harder. So if I can reassure all of you, we're actually making less work. We're creating efficiencies and making one piece work harder rather than requiring us as content directors to think, oh my God, I need 17 different stories for 17 different channels and it's too much. That one story can do what you need it to do if you go to capture it and capture your assets for it and capture your content for it in ways that are mindful of where it's headed ultimately. We do this a lot. Maggie, you can go to the next slide. We do this a lot for our partner programs and people who invest in those different offerings. We're always looking to stretch that work, stretch that story, because A, it's interesting to different audiences when presented in different ways to them, right? You know, we need to meet them where they are, but my goodness, we are adding value with that story. And then the more that we can get the right sorts of assets or the right mix of visuals and things like that, it kind of means the possibilities for retelling and repackaging and stretching and revisiting and you know, pulling back out that story are kind of endless, which is really beautiful. So it's this kind of one capture with many, many possibilities for months and years to come when you think about it the right way. So we have seen great success with this. And again, trying to reassure you that it doesn't mean more work. It's like work smarter, not harder, kind of an approach here. So I promised you guys takeaways. My team with this deck, we really wanted to focus on things you can literally do today, not hiring any new people, not adding a bunch of hours, not spending a bunch of money. So from this section, here's some 3 key takeaways, things you could literally get started on today. Just tell yourself, you know, we are going to adopt and maintain that user first mindset. It is our mission. It is our mantra on our own channels, on our content channels. We are adding value for a user. We're not trying to sell them on our value, right? Yes, you're doing that. Yes, you're bringing the amazing offerings and ideas and spaces to life, but you're doing it with a different sort of empathetic lens on it, right? I'm steeped in understanding of your different users and your different users' needs by channel. So just starting today, tell yourself and your team, and maybe you already are doing this, but let's spread it to the broader team that we are here for our users, our followers, our folks who have our email subscribers, the folks who have raised their hands and have sought us out. We are going to provide value to them we'll meet them where they are. Another thing you can do today, identify the right team to help evolve that content planning process in the ways that we discussed. So you don't necessarily have to change your entire process today, but start thinking through the individuals that you might want at that roundtable discussion, that initial idea sourcing, that rich brainstorm, and go ahead and drop the first meeting on their calendar just to start talking about it. And then for each of your channels, this is an exercise that you could absolutely start today and then take to that group ultimately, but try to define that sentence, that one sentence that represents the overlap of user needs and business objectives and where you add value. And that's where your content strategy will play out for each channel. So those are 3 takeaways for this section. I'm going to hand it off to Maggie, who's up next. She's our social media strategist, and she is going to walk you through more of the specific planning and tips and tricks and tactics to make sure that you're gathering and telling the stories in the right way.
Awesome. Thanks, Christina. So I want everyone to stop right now and just say to yourself, I know more than a lot of people, pretty much everybody, about my destination, and I can be my story's best storyteller. Because telling your story is ultimately, you have all the tips and tricks, you have all that local knowledge, you understand your destination better than any traveler could, unless they actually live there. Then maybe you're on equal footing. But going out and getting those stories from locals is also a really great way to tell your own story as a destination. So we're going to go a little bit into, how do we even start to conceptualize that? There are so many interesting stories, so many secret spots, so many amazing places that people may not know about. And where do you even begin to start covering those? So the first step is starting to build a framework for your story. You know, we talk about how web can be that kind of mothership piece. It's that most evergreen spot that people can keep coming back to for information. So, you know, when you think about telling a story, I usually start thinking about this through, okay, how are we filling that intersection between those business objectives and then user needs? So whether you're telling those stories on your website, through email or social, all of the above, you're hitting on every channel, you know, understanding the core of the story is the most important step to take. So, you know, answering those questions, starting with what unique perspective can I bring my audience? You know, what do I know that I need to share with the world, that I know people need to know about my destination? And the next, you know, considering, okay, where is this going to end up? You know, how am I going to guide people through this story, show them what they're looking at, show them what they're missing. And then, you know, from there, understanding, you know, where this can go. It's going back to that, starting with the story and then finding out, you know, how to add that in your content. As it goes through that whole process. But, you know, starting with a game plan is my biggest recommendation, because you can provide those solutions. You can provide that reason for visiting, that emotional connection to that place on the screen. You can provide that educational takeaway, like, oh, I didn't know this place that is 20 miles from me has such cool stuff going on, or that relatable experience around a shared interest. We'll get into a little bit about this when we talk about trends, but showing people you hold the same interest as them as a destination. You know, I know some places have like themed coffee drinks at local coffee shops. Like Taylor Swift ended her Eras tour yesterday. This reminds me, there's this local place that has a really great lavender haze latte, something like that. You know, kind of setting the groundwork for those relationships and that emotional connection that you cultivate through, you know, social relationships, email relationships, deepening those relationships. But the biggest question here is, once I know what story I want to tell, how am I going to support this story? And, you know, copy and imagery have to work hand in hand on these multimedia platforms to tell your story, because some people are visual learners, some people are auditory learners, some people just have to see everything together for it all to make sense. And building up a collection of assets, especially when you're a small team, can be one of the most intimidating parts of creating new content and telling new stories. But it doesn't have to be. There are ways that you can break down this process, create a game plan in a way that feels a lot less intimidating, and a lot less like, okay, I can go out and do this now. It can be an ongoing process. Discovery is half of the fun part of it. So I usually like to separate my thought process in capturing these long-lasting assets that can be reused, repurposed, upcycled across platforms, so that they can be repurposed over time and they can really do that legwork that you want good visual assets to do. So, you know, understanding those primary visuals, the first thing you think about with a hero image, that slow pan or that beautiful landscape imagery, you know, a door opening, entry into a location. We'll talk a little bit about short form video and how that can completely reframe a place. People engaging in cool activities, something unique that they can only do in this one place, showing life, an immersive walkthrough or an image, putting people in the shoes of visiting a location. Exterior shots of a business, orienting them in the community. You know, those are those primary visuals that really set the stage for your story. But then you think about secondary visuals. You know, what happens in the in-between? What are the details? What are the small, you know, unique things that are a part of this destination? It may not be the first thing you see, but you have to check this out while you're here. You know, a moving traveling shot, the things you pass on the way there, but also close-up clips of those important little details, you know, products, foods. I know my phone eats first, signs, things that or even just really cool offerings within a space that help paint the full picture of the experience. I like to break those up into primary and secondary because one supports the other and vice versa. And you can repurpose those across platforms like we saw in those examples Christina showed earlier. You know, you have these hero images that you can feature on the website, on the web page, and on the email listing. But when you get to social, those secondary visuals can come in and support those hero images, showing like there's even more to explore, even more to enjoy. So I'm just going to show a couple examples of, primary versus secondary, and then just show kind of how they come together to support each other. This is one example of a static primary and secondary visual. This is when we were in Old Salem, and you see a woman baking the bread. You see the kitchen. You see that, beautiful little kitchen preparation area, and it really immerses you in that space. But then there's that secondary visual of just that bread that you just want to pick up and take home with you. And that kind of orients you to those little details of things that you can pick up while you're there, things that you just want to take home with you as a memory. And for short form video, we have this reel that we stitched together from just spending a day in Boone. And I think it has a really, really good mix of primary and secondary visuals to show you, okay, yes, this is the space. And then here are the little details that make this special. And so there you can see those primary visuals, those opening the door, entering a new space, are supported by those little product details where it's like, oh, I like that, I want to go there, or that breakfast burrito looks amazing, I have to go there. So those give you multiple reasons to believe. And we'll talk a little bit about short form video, but it's meant to flow together as you would through your day. But with that being said, we talk a little bit about capturing content, and you can be that content gatherer going out and finding those visuals, but you can also be a content hunter. I mean, here's the thing, travelers will feature you in their own social posts. They'll have these super meaningful experiences and want to share them with the world. And that is something that you can really harness and leverage with user-generated content, or UGC. This, requesting rights to these images through your account and featuring it in your content can add that layer of authenticity to your brand's presence on web, email, and social across all platforms, because it shows how people are engaging with your destination. And it also increases and diversifies your pool of assets without you having to go out and capture every single image. And so it really extends the life of, it really extends the pool of what you have access to. And we love leveraging UGC because it just has that authentic voice to it. It doesn't feel too polished, and it feels very, very genuine in how it comes across across our platforms. So we talk a little bit about creating a game plan, planning to create, and beyond. Starting out by asking yourself a few questions. You have a story in your mind, where you want to capture, what you want to tell people about. So how do you make a plan? Because that is going to maximize the time you're spending out capturing content, because time is money, time is valuable, and you want to make sure these are going to have a long lifespan for you. So start with a game plan. Here are a few questions to ask yourself. First of all, where is this content headed? We have our story. We understand the needs of the users and how we're going to address them. So where do I want to put it? What types of assets do I have to capture? You're thinking, okay, I need this type of primary visual, and I think this type of secondary visual is going to support this. Make a list of those things. Understanding what medium you want to use also informs some of those content capture decisions. Again, what are the highlights of this point of interest, and what can I capture that shows off that unique offering? Do they have a special dish that people have to absolutely know about? Do they have a super cool wine cellar that, has this insane selection? We want to highlight that. Again, what medium fits this POI best, photo or video? And I always say capture more than you think you need from more angles than you think you need. Because ultimately, when you get to telling that story, sometimes you think you have everything, and then you just want to make sure that you have all your bases covered, because again, you might be a year from now, you might want to cover the same place or refresh the type of information you have on your website or in your email or on your social channels. You want to refresh that information, and you can bring in that other POV. So ensuring maximizing that time, always be capturing. Is there a person at this POI who could provide a new interesting POV who knows so much more about this specific place, or to add some depth to that story, to add those little recommendations that you might not know, but they definitely know, and they understand that so deeply that you can feature those in that story? Are there activities that might require talent? This is a big question, because like some places do benefit from human engagement, that active human engagement. The contrary to popular belief, for organic content specifically, you don't have to hire talent to make something a meaningful engagement with a space. You can bring a friend, you can bring a coworker. If this location benefits from human engagement, you want to show that engagement, and it doesn't have to be hard to bring someone along to help tell that story. And then also, again, with maximizing time, are there other places around this POI that I also want to capture new or updated imagery for? You know, places change, and sometimes if something is just around the corner, it's better to go around and capture it while you're there than have to come back later. So, you know, strategically, are there places that are on my mind right now that I could go to in order to you know, capture those refreshed or new assets that I know I need? So once you have this bucket of assets and stories, where do we go from there? You know, your assets and stories should never be used one time on one platform. You should always be searching for, you know, new ways to incorporate this content and really stretching it and making it work across platforms. And refreshing content over time is also really important. You know, making sure it's up to date and understanding that places change, and also places have new offerings. So refreshing that content can not only help in things like SEO, or, you know, bringing up something new in social can refresh people's interest in a new place. Year over year, these can be used to condense into new stories, reused to tell stories in a different framework, and upcycled into new content. We don't call it recycle because you're not, you know, you're upcycling into something completely new, something completely unique, and you're just making those assets work for you over time. So we promised takeaways again, 3 things you can do today to tell your story. 1, brainstorm and make a list of the stories that you know only the locals know, something you want the world to know and you want people to understand about your destination, that you think that there's a gap, there's that gap that fulfills those user needs. Think about those stories in your community that you can create that plan around. Second one is to brainstorm 2 to 3 places where you can capture a start creating that content capture game plan. You know, just understanding, you know, where you want to prioritize updating and capturing those assets is an awesome first step, because then it's on your mind. And 3, we say this so much internally, like Katie can verify this. ABC, the whole VNC team can actually verify this because they're amazing at this. ABC, always be capturing. Keep your phone on hand for any stories you may encounter in the wild. You never know when that beautiful photo-worthy moment is going to happen, and when a new story will arise. And we have these amazing little contraptions in our hands that can help tell that. And oftentimes that less polished, on the go kind of footage or photo feels a lot more authentic to discovery and experience. And we have a quick session just about, so we talk a little bit about video, we talk about a little bit about those short clips. So what about video? The reels, the shorts, the TikToks. What about this? Should you be creating short form video? It is a time intensive process. It's resource intensive. I'm gonna make the case for at least experimenting with it a little bit, because as of actually quickly in the chat, if you've used a short form video platform, anything from TikTok, Reels, Shorts, to research something in the past, whether it's a trip or a product, let me know. Can you drop which platform you've used in the chat? I just want to kind of see where everyone's coming from and, you know, what platforms are most frequently being used for that. Because we all get our, more and more people are getting their information from video. And in 2022, 73% of consumers preferred to watch a short form video to learn about a product or service, because I can vouch for this, TikTok makes me buy a lot. But some benefits of short form video, why is this the case? It delivers that unmatched level of authenticity. A lot of these videos are taken on the go. They feel authentic because you can see the person reacting in real time, and it doesn't feel posed or staged. Certain destinations can benefit from immersive content. You know, we found that indoor and activity-based destinations need that movement and humanization to really show the appeal and the excitement. And then short form videos aren't just social media platforms, they're search engines. So, you know, nearly 40% of Gen Z and increasingly into other generations, like especially millennials, prefer TikTok and Instagram for online search over Google. And they rely on digital influencers more than other generations. So, you know, having a short form video presence in place can actually be equivalent to showing up on someone's Google radar. So understanding that you are searchable and people are looking for that information. So you want to meet them where they are. And a big question of this, part of the magic of these platforms is that they're so trend-based. You know, there are these niche references that pop up on these short form video platforms that you would not know if you were there. So that's one consideration when you're trying to decide whether you want to invest time and energy into this. Staying into the loop with these trends takes a lot of time. And that's a major consideration. Sometimes you go to look for a sound and an hour later you are down a rabbit hole. So you want to understand that that is a part of the game, and that's a part of staying, you know, up to date and connecting with consumers on that emotional level, you know, understanding that we have the same sense of humor. And then hopping on trending sounds can boost your reach. You know, when people engage with one sound, the algorithm just keeps on serving you similar videos. So that can supplement discovery. And then trends add that other layer of authenticity to your brand. It humanizes you. You have that similar sense of humor. People feel like they can communicate with you and form that emotional connection. So 3 things you can do today with short form video. I say get familiar with at least one short form video platform. You know, scroll for 15 minutes. You can time yourself. You have a hard out at 15 minutes. If you're on Instagram, you're already halfway there. Reels is built right into the app. So I invite you just to scroll and see if you can visualize yourself there. 2, think of where you may already have video, you know, drone footage, if you've engaged in some of that on production, event videos from the community. And anytime your phone ate first, I can't tell you how many times I have food videos on my phone. Those are all fair game. And then look to others in your industry for inspiration. Look to people that you see have a really great social presence, and take a look and see, can I visualize myself here? So going off that short form video discussion, adding that layer of authenticity, I want to pass it off to Dana to talk a little bit about how content creators can help in that space.
Thanks, Maggie. Up until now, we've been talking about owned media primarily, and complementing your own media with creators is a way to amplify or add value to your content strategy, and it doesn't have to cost a lot. Creators are one of the projects I work on along with a travel guide. And if we have some time at the end, I'm happy to speak to how you might be able to repurpose some of your travel guide information into content at the end of this webinar. Creators are just what they sound like. They create content for you as a trusted source, a POV outside of your own visual brand identity that helps you expand your storytelling, reach engaged audiences, and build skilled content. Essentially, you're not alone. Working with those who are already out there complementing your work and paying them to create something for you is a win-win all around. You can't have a downtown with one business. It takes a whole street, a community to make up a thriving downtown. I'm going to pass the mic to Jess with Luke Wire, who helps to manage our creator strategy. And she's going to take you through what a collaboration with a content creator might look like.
Thank you so much. All right. From a high level perspective with the content creator landscape, I absolutely love this quote from Skift because I really think it emphasizes how this landscape has changed so astronomically over the last decade. So right now, especially post-pandemic, there's a big focus on hyper creative, hyper local, and hyper talented in video and storytelling content. And that shift has kind of gone from those celebrity endorsers to people who are creating content because they love it and gaining traction because of their experiences and passion, which is a big shift. And that actually takes us to this next slide, which covers off a little bit more. So there have been so many changes since, I guess 20 years ago, oh my gosh, since the beginning of time with bloggers. And you really see spikes in 2015 with savvy celebrities, lifestyle influencers. That's not really where the space is at right now. Especially in 2023, it's all about the partnership, something that's both mutually beneficial and significantly more meaningful because you're both creating content together, you're building relationships together, and you're highlighting your passions together. So you have to think about a content creator as someone that you want to work with both now and in the long term, and someone that you would like to collaborate with personally instead of doing a one-off thing to gain, impressions or views from. So why use creators? There's a lot of really excellent reasons to use creators, but we've distilled it down into our top 5. First and foremost, reaching existing engaged audiences, especially when you're going after the smaller niche creators. They tend to have very active fans who are following them for a very specific reason, whether that be hiking trails or restaurant reviews or just their general day-to-day. It also establishes brand authenticity. They're a trusted source. They've developed a lot of great content and built trust within their audience over the years. And it's a great point of view outside of your own. It's so important, and I know Christina spoke about this in her section, to have a view outside of your own to show different angles and perspectives. And this is a really great way of doing that. And that kind of leads into expanding your visual storytelling, and most important, building up your content with a skilled resource. So this next section is really getting into the how of doing it. So I'll take you to the next slide. So how do you source influencers? Because I feel like a lot of people gatekeep this. There's a really easy, no cost to entry way of doing it. And one of the top ways that we like to source our influencers is just let them come to you. Tap into people that are already reaching out to you. They are so invested. They're already creating content and they want to work together. And that's part of that collaboration. They're already showing that passion for you. So just tap into that existing passion there. Then taking a little step back, looking into people that are already creating great content about North Carolina and local destinations. They have a passion for it, clearly. They're already creating great content. It exists out there. They have the capacity to do it. You can also see if it aligns with your creative direction or the story that you want to tell. The second is my sneaky favorite. So using channels like Google, TikTok, and Instagram to identify creators. So one of my favorite tips. Go to another destination, go to a comparator brand, a competitor brand, someone local, look at who they're following. Go through their follower list. Chances are you're going to find some excellent content creators that align with who you might want to also reach out with. And that's a really easy and great way of starting your list instead of having to go on a deep dive rabbit hole of all the potential options. There's also a lot of hashtags around photography and UGC that you can then tap into to source influencers as well. And if you want to do a little sharing with everyone, because sharing is caring with influencers, working with other destinations to see who they're using and collaborating together, drop your favorite in the chat and you guys can collaborate and reach out to them. And finally, one that you don't necessarily have to do is tapping into a managed resource or larger content partner. There's a lot of restrictions there and there's typically a large cost associated. You can really cover off on what you want to do very successfully with the first 3 points. Moving into the next. So here's the sweet spot. I feel a lot of people are really looking at how many followers they have and, do they have a significant amount? Will this even count? You don't really have to worry about that. The sweet spot is very much between the mid to nano-sized influencers for quite a few reasons. One, typically the people that fall into this segment are more based on their interests than larger scale lifestyle. So you have people that like to hike, you have people that like to, go to food destinations. It's a little bit more catered to their interests versus just being influential, which is key. They're also more cost effective. They have better reach within their audiences because it's a little more targeted, and they typically don't do as many collaborations there. So that's really the sweet spot. So don't be afraid to use someone that has 1,000 fans. If that content that they're creating is meaningful to you and it works, and they have a nice reach with the right audiences that can drive engagement and ultimate visitation, they're great to work with. Now, in-state versus out-of-state. You don't have to perpetually be driving people out of state into your destination. Focusing on in-state is an incredible and a great starting point for reaching people. So first and foremost, getting local, finding the people close to you. They're easy to activate and they have a built-in knowledge. The other thing is they're there. You're not paying for fees to get them to travel out to you. They're in the area, they know the area, and they also have that vested interest in where they're located. That's the best place to start. And then kind of branching out a little bit more and connecting with people that both love and know the state because they have that passion there and they want to highlight it in its best light. And they also have that authentic voice. They've lived as a resident, they know the area. It's a big state, so they can highlight other locations and show their surprise, or they can dive deep into hidden gems that they've acquired and provide a really unique vantage point from that. It also is a great way to encourage in-state travel, but keep in mind, a lot of these influencers do have pull beyond just the location that they live in, and the follower base can span nationally, even if they're focused in-state. Moving out more towards an out-of-state, connecting with people that have a passion for travel and aligned interests, even focusing on drive markets, knowing that it might be a little bit easier to get them in. There's a lot of people, and we're working with T, who are based in Georgia. It's a very easy drive for them. So it works. They have that out-of-state perspective, an authentic voice from a discovery standpoint of a tourist, but they're easily accessible to come and explore and do their trip. It's also a great way to expand the diversity of the travelers that you have in the market, in addition to illustrating why your destination is special to someone who doesn't live there, which is a nice voice to have. So a creator checklist. This is very critical to go through when vetting creators because the process is a bit arduous, right? You're doing a lot of research. You want to find that great match. So do they align with your mission first and foremost? Is it someone that you want representing you? Does the content that they have reflect your thoughts, your missions? Does it complement it? And then no red flags. This is like the huge one. Have they posted anything incriminating? Which sounds crazy, but that happens a lot. Have they posted in a while? People who haven't posted a lot might not necessarily be the best ones to go after. So really weeding out the people that don't make sense once you have that list is key. Do they have authenticity and passion? When you can tell when people post stuff, like, do they feel truly about what they're posting or are they doing it for the likes? And that really comes through. So going after someone who might be smaller but feels very passionate, you're going to get that shining through into the quality of content that they create. So it's so key. And that really kind of goes also down into relatable. Can your fans see themselves doing this? Can they see themselves, in the content that they're creating, in the person that you have selected? That's also critical to be relatable. Consistency, king. Like, is the content they're creating consistent in quality, in cadence, and in general, are they talking about consistent messages? Are they not all over the place? And then finally, and one that is a big one for me personally, is are they collaborative and responsive? If they don't respond back to you in 2 weeks without a really good reason why, or it got lost, that's a little bit of a red flag there. You want someone that's going to work with you as a team because it is a collaborative effort. You want someone to help facilitate the process with you because it is mutually beneficial. So someone who's genuinely excited is who you should look for. Now down to the nitty gritty here, a less fun but very important aspect of the process. So make sure your contract works hard for you and any potential outcome, because there's a lot that could happen with a content creator. So first and foremost, having that NDA signed if you need to, a social compliance guide with FTC guidelines. And this just means that they're disclosing that they're working with you in a partnership, because the FTC does crack down on that. Another one that we really want to call out is leave no trace. It's really important that the content they're creating for you embodies this regardless of what it is, because it's really critical to the state and it's nice to have in there. Now, these are the basic legal terms of the contract. So this is really your schedule and what you want your campaign to look like with them. And then I bolded this because this is the most important for when you're doing content curation, is what's your usage and ownership rights for it for both paid and organic? Can you use the content that they've captured for you, a year from now without having to pay them? Do you have the rights to put it on your website or just on your social channels? Those nitty gritties are very, very key. And the last few are more so indemnification, force majeure, like if they say something you don't like after you've vetted them thoroughly, can you break your contract? If they break their arm or get sick, have you sort of covered off on that there? Because these things can happen. And now what does success look like? And there's 3 key aspects to success. So qualitative, compatibility with your channels, your content, having great content and meaningful feedback, this really quality relationship that you're building. Quantitative lies more in the actual metrics, your engagement rates, impressions, video views, kind of what are you getting from the output there. What I think is most critical is relationship building. Have you established a relationship with the creator? Have they established one with you? Are you growing a network of content creators? And this is critical because a lot of stuff occurs after your campaign with them. So for example, we've worked with Madeline on the Move, and although we did one smaller campaign with her, we've built a relationship where she's incorporating Leave No Trace into her existing content organically as she moves forward. And that's been really critical. If you have a great experience with a content creator, big or small, continuing that relationship and having be like mutually beneficial long-term is an excellent way of having that network, being able to re-tap into people and growing your content database. So this is Madeline on the Move. This is an example of like a lookbook that we put together. It doesn't have to be this extensive. It can simply be a list of people that you like, what their follower size is, and a link out so you can access them with a note on why you like them and why they might be a good fit for you. And then the next slide, this is the campaign that we did with her. So we identified her, we partnered with her, connected to highlight on outdoor and see Leave No Trace. We mapped out a trip and really focused on a mix of video and static images across Instagram and TikTok, because those are what worked really well for her. Because we built a meaningful relationship, she did additional added value posts. She's incorporated us into her ongoing organic content, and it's become a very collaborative relationship and an example of something that we definitely will continue and tap into again. So here's 3 things you can do today. I know that content creators can be a bit daunting because there is a lot of work that goes into it from start to finish, but just identifying people that are already engaged, local to you, that are active is such a great first step. Then creating a simple list of what that collaboration may look like. And it could just be 3 points. Like, I want great content out of this. I want something I can tap into on an ongoing basis. I want to build up what I have on TikTok. That's a great list. And then finally, identifying someone who can help you create a contract template so you can act nimbly, because contracts are really great to have in place to ensure that you both get what you need out of the process. There are also a ton of free templates online. You can even toggle the state. It'll create the template so you have a baseline and you can get it to the appropriate people. And thank you.
Thank you, Jess, and thank you to all of our panelists that joined us today and all of you who logged in to learn about content creation. We are now in the Q&A portion of this webinar, and we've got one that came through at the beginning around process and procedure for requesting rights, and I'm guessing that's usage rights for UGC, user-generated content, as well as some best practices. I'm going to have Maggie take this one and talk a little bit about what we do and things that you all can do for your own brands and destinations.
Absolutely. And spoiler alert, it could take like 10 minutes. It's really just it's as simple as drafting up a question saying, we love, first of all, starting with, wow, we love your image. This is beautiful. We love it. Something along those lines, complimenting the photographer and saying, we'd love to use this in we'd love to use this in our marketing efforts. Could we post on our social channels and website with credit? Always specify that it's with credit. And sometimes we have a hashtag that we also use because we use CrowdRiff, which is a UGC sourcing platform. So it automatically, whenever somebody uses our hashtag #YesVisitNC hashtag, it automatically filters into that database and tells us like, we have been given rights on this. If you're not working with a tool like that, it's also a really good way just to keep all your ducks in a row so you can search the hashtag and see the photos that have filtered under that. So, creating a custom hashtag to process those rights approvals is a really good way to kind of keep track of those. I usually have a visual for this too, so you can kind of see it, but it's as simple as a comment that you drop under the photo, and they can respond to you. Sometimes they just send a yes, and that's okay too. So it's you kind of have to stay on top of it a little bit, but it's just as simple as sending a comment or a DM if you're more comfortable with that.
Yeah, Katie Bailey, thank you so much. She dropped what we normally send in the chat, so you guys can use your own version of that. It's a helpful little sentence.
And we got another question around Twitter/X, as well as the new platform Threads from Meta. Is everyone migrating to Threads and stopping posting on X/Twitter? Maggie, I'll give this one to you as well.
So this is a developing topic. I will say I've seen a lot of similar tourism brands, including VisitNC. We've decreased our cadence a lot on Twitter/X. I still call it Twitter, even though it looks like, I guess it's going to be X. But I will say that cadence and activity on Twitter has dropped a lot within the brand space. And then Threads, I would wait a month a little bit more, because Threads has dropped in users after a month of being on the scene. So recent reports have come out that usage has decreased a lot. So it's not necessarily going to be that perfect fit for a Twitter replacement, simply because the audiences on Twitter and Instagram are so vastly different. And I know that I was apprehensive joining Threads just because my Twitter audience was very different from my Instagram audience, and the types of posts that go on there, the sense of humor is also very different. So it's mainly up to preference, but I will say that Threads is not that exact fit for that Twitter-sized hole in the universe. I would still keep an eye on X. They have new leadership coming in, but I wouldn't put as much time and energy on being on the platform as I would have advocated for a year ago.
Thanks, Maggie. And with that, we are at time, but as you can see, we've added both my contact information as well as Dana's. Any additional questions you all have, please feel free to send them our way. We're always available. And Maggie, if you want to move to that next slide, our next partner webinar is what's new and coming up with Visidency's Partner and Industry Relations. That'll be September 14th at 10 a.m. So look for the invitation for that. And we also will be putting out this recording as soon as it's ready, as well as some additional resources. So thank you all so much for joining, and looking forward to continuing these conversations around content and content creation. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.